hip hop, the hippity hop, the hip hop hop, the don't stop to the bang bang boogie.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And before we get started, we have some big news in the No Name Music Cast world. This week, I have given Joy a USB flash drive with almost a complete works of Alan Partridge on it. So for all you fops out there, fans of Partridge, you will be jumping for joy. Phil, I'm sure you'll be going, woohoo, as you're driving along in your car. Gilbo will be going, for goodness sake.
Oh, for goodness sake. Well, I have the fob and I have the IT equipment necessary, like a computer of such. And I will spend my weekend getting caught up on Alan Partridge. Tim did give me specific instructions on which way to, or what way to listen to it, like what to listen to first, which I put on a sticky note and wrapped it around the jump drive. So I have specific instructions as well.
Yeah, it's like, some people who are into Star Wars will say that, well, you have to watch the original trilogy, then the prequel trilogy, and then this, and then that, and that's how you're supposed to do it. I think in the Partridge universe, you want to start off with Knowing Me, Knowing You, then watch I'm Alan Partridge, and then probably the radio show, and then probably Mid Morning Matters and all the other stuff from there.
Well, on the next episode, I will report back my findings of Alan Partridge.
There we go. We are hoping Joy likes it, but equally, Joy could be in the Gilbo camp of not enjoying Alan Partridge. But we will see.
We will see. And even if I don't like it, at least I'll get the references.
There you go. So, this week's topic is my turn to pick. And the topic is something that we have sort of dotted around a little bit in some of our previous episodes.
Okay.
But this week, I would like to talk about the music of Nile Rogers.
Oh, Nile Rogers. Okay, yeah, we've talked about him a few times.
So for those of people who don't know, Nile Rogers is a producer, songwriter, and he's a singer too. And he's produced music for so many varied acts, and that's what I wanted to get into on this episode, is some of the music that he's been involved with. Now, Nile Gregory Rogers, which gives the gentleman his full name, was born in September 1952, and he's probably most famous for being a member of the band Chic. And yes. I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Chic, Joy.
Correct.
So he put that band together with Bernard Edwards, and they were trying to sort of channel a kind of disco sound that was very popular in the 70s. And an interesting rock and roll fact about Chic, they were, Nile in particular, was very influenced by Kiss, believe it or not.
It's random.
Yeah, he liked the look of the logo, and he liked the fact the name of the band was 4 letters, and it was very to the point.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So that's why they had several names that they were working on, but they landed on Chic because he thought Kiss was cool, 4 letters, the logo, the whole thing, and that's where it came from.
Well, if you think about it, you've got ABBA, you've also got AC/DC. The 4-letter thing's probably not that uncommon now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I look through my iTunes collection, I can find another one, In Excess.
There you go. No.
Which I think is a band that we probably haven't even spoken about much on this podcast.
Oh, one thing I remember about In Excess, well, I mean, I remember their music, but also what I remember, they were the one who had that reality TV show to find a new singer, right?
Yeah, Michael Hutchinson. What's his name? Michael Hutchinson. Yeah.
That guy.
That gentleman, Michael, who fronted In Excess, he sadly took his own life, I believe.
Yeah.
Or some variation of that, sadly. And then they had that Rockstar Supernova when they were going to try and find a replacement singer for him.
Did they find a replacement?
Well, they found somebody, and it was one of these contrived scripted reality shows. So they find this person, and then I think they did a tour off the back of the TV show, and then they made an album, and then I think it lasted a year or two, and then that person was out on their ear.
I just remember I've seen like a few episodes, I think, in passing. My mom likes to watch a lot of that stuff, and so that's one of the things that stick out about them. Anyway, back to Nile Rogers.
Yeah, so so Nile Rogers, I mean, Chic was around in the 70s and in the early 80s, and then they split up. But Nile got involved in music production and songwriting and what have you. And the amount of acts that he's worked with is absolutely staggering. Mm-hmm. And one of the signatures of Nile's sound is that funky, clean guitar. And I think we covered it in another episode before. But the guitar he plays is a 1960 Fender Stratocaster guitar, and he calls it the Hit Maker.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the one you said had a name for it, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah, he apparently bought it at like a pawn shop in Miami Beach, Florida, and it's nothing. You know, at the time it was nothing special. He probably paid the going rate for it. And it was actually Bernard Edwards that taught him how to play in that kind of very funky, choppy guitar style. And he calls that chucking. That's how he describes that technique.
Huh. I mean, that's very specific, but it does kind of give you an idea of how that would work, though, with using that term.
Yeah, and for the guitar geeks in the audience, he doesn't use an amp. He plugs it straight into the mixing desk, and he uses the neck pickup. And that's how he gets that very unique sound. But the signature of a lot of these songs that we're about to discuss is that Nile Rogers guitar sound.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very unique. So what I wanted to do was just go through some of the music that Nile has been involved with, not necessarily in any particular chronological order, but just picking out a few tracks here and there, just the kind of things that Nile's worked on. So I'm starting with probably one of the most recent things that you would be familiar with, and I suppose most people would be familiar with, is his work with Daft Punk. Mm-hmm. Now, he worked with them on Random Access Memories in 2015, and I think his playing is all over that album. I don't think he's on every single track, but I think he has production credits on almost that whole album. But the tracks that he is most prominent are Lose Yourself to Dance and Get Lucky.
So both those are fantastic. And Get Lucky was probably the bigger hit that most people would know. Yeah. It was everywhere. But the reason it would work so well is it really was just a 70s disco tune. I'm just going to say it. And it worked so well for his sound. I mean, that's the way I view it. It really just came off as a disco song to me.
Yeah, it's very similar to his work with Chic. It's almost identical. And I mean, the interesting thing about the whole of that Daft Punk album, Daft Punk wanted to make a dance album, and they wanted to make an EDM album, but use real instruments. That was their brief when they made it.
I mean, that makes sense, though, because it does kind of have an EDM feel, and that's their thing. But I mean, you can't beat real instruments for me, so.
No, and what they did is normally, I mean, you know, with digital recording, you're cutting and pasting and copy and pasting and moving parts around. But normally, if you have a band playing, the bones of it is somewhere there's a live performance in there or a live track or something like that. And what Daft Punk did is they worked with some really superb session musicians. They worked with Nathan East on the bass and Omar Hakim on the drums for most of this album. But rather than get them to play the whole track, they would get them to play parts and then sample it into their Pro Tools or whatever they were using, and then copy, paste, and move those parts around to give them all the editing that they wanted to do.
I mean, that's very specific, but I see how that works.
Yeah, and I said Nile was all over these tracks. And in fact, Lose Yourself to Dance, he's in the video. Yeah.
I've seen the video of it. Now, on another note, and then you've got, I don't know how you feel about him, but Pharrell Williams, does sing a verse and Get Lucky. And I think he has production credits on a lot of the songs, because while I don't find Pharrell Williams to be a great musician per se, because I mean, he's got an okay voice, he could, you know what I mean? But he doesn't really play any instruments. He produces and writes a lot of music, though. And to Nile's credit and to his credit, that seems to be where a lot of the money is. Truthfully.
Oh, yeah. As we've discussed before, if you're a producer of an album, the record company or the artist will be paying you a fee to do that, and you'll probably get a royalty off it too. Yeah. So songwriting, production, that is where, sadly, where the money is made. Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of like I think what Pharrell Williams he does that like the Legend of the Phoenix or whatever in that song, and then he has his Get Happy song, and I think he has like two other songs that he actually does himself. But I don't really find him to be a singer. But if you look up he's kind of one of those people that if you go back and look, he's got like songwriting credits and producing credits on like 300 songs. That's crazy.
Exactly. Well, I mean, he obviously knows where the money is in the world of music these days.
Isn't that the way? It's weird though, because like I don't even see him as a musician. It does say that it comes down to me in some ways that some of it's just being lucky. Haha, get lucky. But also some of it's like I don't know if you agree with this, Tim, but to produce music like Nile Rogers or to produce music like Pharrell, which Nile Rogers was a musician, but these producers you hear who aren't musicians themselves, sometimes all you have to have is the right ear.
Yeah, I think so. I think it comes down to that. Especially with, like, you can get like this software like I have on my computer. It's free basically, and it has loops in it, and it has sounds in it, and it has samples in it. And I think it's just having a knack of stringing it together, and like you say, being lucky with who's hearing it.
Who wants to hear? Who wants to work with you? Who you happen to meet out at a bar one night? I've heard stories like that. But yeah, I think that. But it's kind of like sometimes the people who become famous as better musicians aren't always the ones. Because like Nile Rogers is a good example. He's not one of the most, I would say, lucrative, household names of all time, right? But he's an amazing. He may be for us, but you don't think of him at like what most people would think of, like Elvis, right? He's not on that superstar level, but he's a fantastic. Sometimes it's about that it factor, I think, too.
Yeah, I mean, most people on the street will have heard of Elvis. They would have heard of Michael Jackson. They would have heard of the Beatles, that stuff. But a lot of people, you say Nile Rodgers, and I think you have to be a music aficionado to some degree to know who that is.
I mean, if you said Chic, they might know the Freak, but that's about it. So then you said the guy from Chic, and then they're like, oh, the one who played, and they're like, okay, that makes sense. But it's kind of interesting because he's an amazing artist, or at least I think he is, and I love his guitar, but he's not that well known, I think, to the general public.
Oh, that's good. And that's a terrible shame because he is such a talented guy. And
look at you, Tim, bringing him out to the no-name music cast world.
There you go, see. Well, one other act that Nile worked with was Sister Sledge. And I believe Sister Sledge was one of the first acts that he produced and worked with. Now, and of course, Sister Sledge, some of these tracks are fantastic. I mean, We Are Family.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we also talked about that on the Family Essence, but also their voices are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they're also, once again, they're kind of what I associate with that disco, which I love the disco sound. I love a funk sound. I love that type of thing. So they really can't do any wrong for me.
Yeah. And really, if you actually play Chic tracks and you play Sister Sledge tracks,
they're pretty similar.
Apart from the voices, it's much the same idea, really. And but it's like you say, it's that really good disco funk sound. But but I like that sound, so it works for me. Exactly. And I mean, other tracks have Lost in Music, Frankie, he's the greatest dancer. I mean,
he's the greatest dancer is the one that always comes to mind for me. What is it? Mama Never Told Me. That's one of theirs. Thinking of You, Got Somebody to Love, or Got to Love Somebody, something like that. So, I mean, but they're just phenomenal singers. So, but once again, that's probably one of my favorite types genres of music. But of course, they're number one. Well, and I think they even did a version of My Guy at one point, but I would say We Are Family is probably their number one hit. Yeah,
I think that's the one that most people think of. And going back to Chic themselves, I mean, I just pulled up the best of Chic. I mean, look, these songs, Good Times, I Want Your Love, Everybody Dance. I mean, it's all quality stuff.
Well, Tim, you haven't said the facts, so I've got to say it. If we're going to talk about Chic, we've got to talk about Studio 50.
Studio 54.
So the rule of thumb goes, and Tim and me have talked about this. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or we just talked about it in person. There is a story, and Nile Rogers has confirmed it. The members of Chic tried to get into Studio 54, and they were denied. They were outside. The guy told them they weren't dressed right. They didn't look right. They weren't popular enough. Liza Minnelli was there that night. I don't know, something. So anyway,
I think it was Grace Jones was there. And Niall knew Grace, I think, through music contacts. And he kept saying to the bouncer, you got to let me in. Grace Jones is in there and she's expecting me.
So
and they were like, nope.
No. So, and if you don't know anything about Studio 54, they were very particular. You had to have a certain look, had to have the know. And I mean, there are stories of people going into Studio 54. I think Cher went on horseback one time. Just like all kinds of, that's real. She went on like a big white horse. You can like look it up. We'll put a picture up on the Instagram of Cher on the horse. I think it was Cher. It's either Cher or somebody as bolsterous as Cher. So they were very particular about who they let in. And obviously drugs, alcohol, and all that was a mix. But they wouldn't let them in. And they wrote Le Freak, of course, after they wouldn't let them into Studio 54. And it was supposed to be, it was another 4-letter word that starts with an F, but we're PG-13. Well, we probably could be PG-13, but PG in general. I can't say it. And they were basically yelling it. So Le Freak, when they yell it in the song, that's what they were yelling. And it was because they were mad because they couldn't get in.
Yeah, it was blank off was the refrain. And so they were so angry when they got back to the hotel room, Bernard Edwards and Nile Rogers. They would just go blah, 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 blank off. And then after a while they were like, this song is too good to waste just being angry at a doorman. We have to do something with this.
So I guess the irony is the Studio 54 got shut down for drugs and embezzling, and they wrote his song. Did you ever hear the story about the liquor license in Studio 54?
No.
Like they didn't have their liquor license. What was it? They had to like bus in alcohol from other places when they first got started or something crazy because they didn't actually have a liquor license.
It doesn't. I mean, it was a thing. It was the 70s, man. Things were different back then,
Well, I watched a lot of documentaries on it. The two guys were crooks and they went to jail and all kinds of things. But there was something about when they either didn't have their liquor license or it got taken away. I can't remember one of the two. And so they couldn't actually sell alcohol there, but they like busted in from another location.
I do know that the Hard Rock Cafe in New York City, the new one in the Paramount Theater in Times Square, they have the Studio 54 sign.
Oh, the big one outside?
It's not the big one, but maybe it was one that was over a door or something, but they have that at the Hard Rock.
Another thing that I've learned about this, and we can go back to Nile Rodgers, just one more Studio 54 fact is, do you know, like I talked about how on the Motown episode, they developed theirs like after the car, like assembly line. Well, what the guys, and I can't remember their names, the two guys who opened up Studio 54 made their idea of this big grandiose, and they did different nights. Like one night would be like this theme and one night would be this type theme, right? It's based off of Broadway shows.
Oh, okay.
So they would take they kind of took the idea of the way you do like scenery on a musical show and brought it into the theater that they were. And actually Studio 54, I think, was a real theater. Like that's where they put the thing up. We used to be a theater, but yeah, that's where they got the ideas from.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Well, there you go.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to go through some of the songs that Nile Rodgers has produced, some famously and maybe some not, depending. Now, when I was researching this, I was surprised to find this out. I did not know, but one of the first production, high level production stuff that Nile was involved with was in 1984. He produced Madonna's "Like a Virgin." Did you know that?
No, I'm like trying to, but it kind of, actually though, I wouldn't have even thought that. I was trying to think of maybe if I could pick up on, I'm like, no, not really. That's crazy.
Yeah, because it doesn't have the funk type guitar thing in it, because it's more of a kind of keyboardy synth pop.
I was like you say, it's more of a pop song.
And apparently he met her in 1984, and Nile was apparently not that impressed with the song. He didn't think it was a good song. He didn't think it had any potential. He didn't want to get involved with it. But the more he was away from it, he's like, actually, the hook of this song is stuck in my head, so let's give it a go. And then, became a massive hit, and then they had the Madonna The Virgin tour and Like a Virgin album and the whole
How many
thing.
times have you done that though? Like with a pop song, they're like, "This song's kind of lame. I don't like it," and then a day later you realize you're sitting there going, "Like a bird." Dang it! Okay, I guess it's pretty good because I do that all the time. I'll be like, "This song's not that good," and then 2 days later, I'm like, "And why am I still singing it?"
Well, the phenomenon is known as earworms.
Yeah, and there's something I've heard for people, something like sing Jesus Loves Me or something, and it's supposed to get the other song out of your head, or supposed to get the song out of your head, but then I feel like you just have Jesus Love Me in your head, so does that really work?
Yeah, I sometimes those songs do get you though, where they just stick and it won't leave, and you can try and cleanse it with anything, and it just will not go.
There's been songs that I think I've had in my head for 3 weeks straight, like easily.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand why. Like you'll wake up and you'll be like, I haven't even heard that song in 6 years, and now it's in my head for the next 7 weeks. How does that even make sense?
I went through a phase of having Islands in the Stream stuck in my head, and I didn't help this by obsessively watching the video for it either. And it was there for a long time, and it went eventually.
I had Emotions by the Bee Gees or the Destiny's Child version because I like both versions. I just kept going, it's just emotions taking me. I was in my head for like 3 months straight.
Oh, goodness me.
I felt like I was never, it's probably where my Bee Gees hate comes from now. So, I mean, it's a good song, but I didn't want to sing it for 3 weeks.
Fabulous. Well, let's move back into the world of Nile Rogers and the music that he's been involved with. So, one track that I do really like of his is from 1980 with Diana Ross, and there's a number of tracks that he was involved with, but one that stands out to me is "I'm Coming Out."
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Also, it's another one of those songs. I swear to you, it has to have been used in every movie since the beginning of time.
I think so. I see. I know of "I'm Coming Out" as the song, and I also knew that it was a anthem for the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah,
but I said that to Hannah, and she knew it more as a song they used on a Weight Watchers commercial.
That wasn't a Weight Watchers commercial in America. No, I know what she's talking about. And it's actually been on, I feel like it's probably been on a bunch of commercials. Like if you go onto IMDb and look up the song credits for "I'm Coming Out," that's Nile Rogers made bank off that song.
I mean, some people say, if you have a great song like "I'm Coming Out" and it has that message that's been adopted by a community or something like that, if you go and sell it to Weight Watchers, you've sold out. But equally, I mean, he's got mouths to feed. I mean, he's got bills to pay.
Well, I mean, I don't really think so. The thing about it is it's that happy-go-lucky kind of. There's a few songs that I make jokes. They've been used since the beginning of time, and that one is like it's not even just like for the LGBTQ plus community. I've seen it in movies where like they get divorced and the girl's coming out of like this bad, she's like getting on the plane, getting ready to celebrate her life for everything. It's like, I'm coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's been used.
Yeah.
It's just to set that mood, I think, in general.
Absolutely. And off the same album, also, you've got the song "Upside Down."
Oh, that one's my favorite. Funny story. I recorded a version of "Upside Down," and this was back when I used to do Twitch sing. So I would stream my singing on Twitch, and I recorded a version of "Upside Down," and it got deleted. Even though it was on the Twitch Sings platform, which means that people were allowed to record it because they said it was too close to the original. So there you go. I was just too fantastic for the Upside Down world.
There you are. You broke the Upside Down world.
Definitely not Diana Ross, but it was good to think about for a few seconds.
There you go. I mean, I put videos up on YouTube constantly. And they're mostly either things from my archives for bands I've played in long ago, or they're videos for the band I'm playing with at the moment called Flaker Hill. And when the drummer likes to video stuff and people like to video stuff in the audience, and I like to put it up on YouTube because people like to see it, and it's cool and all that, and plus it gets the name out, the band out in Google searches and things like that. And sometimes when you put them up, it does say copyright strike. I mean, they used to, if you got a copyright strike, they'd take your content down. But I think now YouTube have a thing where if it gets a copyright strike, they won't remove it. They just monetize it for the person who owns the music.
That's smart. Yeah, Twitch Sings was really fun. Unfortunately, it never really caught on. It was mostly just used as like an online virtual karaoke world, which is fine. I love karaoke, but I like doing it. And then people can interact with you and write stuff. But then you would either have people who are actually really interested in writing you going, hey, this is really nice, or you should try this song, or I like what you did here. But then you get the occasional person that's just like, not appropriate. So I think that's probably why I didn't make it into the world.
I thought that Twitch was more used by gamers. I thought it was a gaming thing.
So most people use Twitch to stream gaming, but they did like it was called Twitch Sings. It only lasted for like a year. It had tons and tons of songs. And like you could put it out there and record it and people could talk to you. You could perform live. You could put your content out there. So it's basically like what the gamers do, but with music. It was fun. And you could even do duets. You could do different things. But for some reason, it never got nobody. After about a year, I guess people lost interest or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the funny thing about Twitch, I was talking to someone the other day who was watching a Twitch stream or something like that of somebody else playing a video game. And as you know, I don't like video games. I don't play video games. It's not something that interests me. And I said to them, why would you want to watch that? Just watching someone else play a video game? Isn't that boring? Wouldn't you prefer to play it yourself? And that person said to me, well, you can play guitar. Why would you ever go to a rock concert? I said, okay, fair point.
Fair. Well, and a lot of people who actually stream on Twitch make money off of it. So that's something. It's crazy to think about what they do.
Yeah. How do they monetize it with ads or...
I don't really know. I've never really looked into it. But I just know like some of the high-end gamers, like there's a gamer, his name is Ninja, who I think got canceled because he said some bad things on air one time. But that's the only one I can think of off the top of the head. He used to stream on Twitch and he was making bank, but I don't know how the money flows.
I mean, I don't like video games, but if someone wants to watch me play a game from a Vic 20 or a Sinclair Spectrum and I can make some money out of it, I'd do that.
You probably got a niche there. You'd be the only one.
Then Joe, you don't remember when video games used to load on audio cassette tapes. Have you ever done that?
I have not. I've seen it in like a video, but my original video game when I was young was I had a regular Nintendo. It was probably the first one. I have played on an Atari. I played on a GameCube. I played on a Super Nintendo, but that's as far back as mine goes.
Oh, I had a Commodore Vic 20, which was the predecessor to the Commodore 64. And that had a cassette deck where you used to load your programs on. And then everybody I knew had a Sinclair Spectrum. And they didn't sell them, I don't believe, in the United States, or it was called a Timex Sinclair or something. It's not the same. But in England, everybody had a Sinclair Spectrum. And I had one of those. And it had a cassette player on it, and you got the game from Boots the Chemist. You go and buy a copy of whatever, I don't know, Manic Miner or Jet Set Willy or something like that, and then you take it home and you put it in your cassette player, and then I think it was like load speech marks or whatever it was, and hit enter, and you press play on your cassette deck, and then it made the same sounds as like an old-fashioned modem as it loaded.
Oh Lord!
Yeah, did all that stuff, and then 2, 5, 10 minutes later, you're playing a game of one little blobby character following another blobby character. It was a golden era, with your GameCubes and all that stuff.
I'm just saying, Tim, if you want to stream that on Twitch, you probably have a niche because nobody else will be doing it. Very specific audience.
But there we go. But anyway, back to the world of Nile Rogers. So one iconic song of his, which most people would know this song, and it's from 1983, and it's David Bowie's Let's Dance.
Yes. I think we've talked about it a few times on the podcast and other episodes too, of course.
Absolutely. So not only does this track have David Bowie on it, it has the production and funky guitar of Nile Rogers, but it has the blues guitarist Stevie Ray Vaughan playing on it. Yes. And, I mean, it has a great music video too. Yeah, the music video has some kind of meaning to it. I think it's like it's native people from Australia are in it, and I think they're living in some kind of like down and out shanty town type thing, and then she sees a pair of shoes in a shop and she can't afford it, and then she either goes into a dream sequence and then she now has the shoes, and then the guy works in a factory and then he's like dragging this huge piece of machinery down the street, and then David Bowie appears like by Ayers Rock
with one white glove.
Yeah, one white glove, miming the guitar part of Stevie Ray Vaughan. However, he's playing the one white glove on the fretting hand.
That's true. And he's wearing like white, but it looks like he's got a bad tan. Like it looks like he got spray tanned like Donald Trump before he. Sorry, David Bowie.
There's a lot going on there and a lot to unpack.
I'm not sure I understand. I just remember the native girl wearing like the yellow dress, and the shoes, and then him with one white glove, and he's wearing all white. And then they show him, and he's like in a desert. He's got super blonde hair and what looks like a really bad spray tan. Exactly.
And you know the interesting thing is, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the blues guitarist Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I am a little bit. I have it like surface hit, so I'm not going to say I'm an expert by any means, but I know what he looks like and who he is.
Yeah, well, he was a blues guitarist that had been in Austin, Texas for many years, and David Bowie actually discovered him in a club in Austin, and he wanted Stevie Ray Vaughan to join his band and tour the world for this tour, and because he collaborated with him on China Girl and on Let's Dance. And Stevie Ray Vaughan said that, you know, he was in the band for like 2 minutes in rehearsals, and he's like, you know, I'm a blues man. He said, I cannot play. I could play this stuff, but he said, this is not my scene. I appreciate this. This is not what I want. And what happened is David Bowie was so impressed with him, he got Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, which was his band, to support him on that tour as a support act.
That makes sense. Well, I've heard of Double Trouble, and I remember Stevie Ray Vaughan wears that hat.
Yes,
there's a very specific hat.
And the sad thing about Stevie Ray Vaughan, he was a drug user and abused alcohol his entire life. Yeah. And he'd just got clean. He'd been clean and sober for 6 months or something. And then he died in a helicopter crash.
That sounds like my luck.
Yeah. It was and the thing is that he was friendly in the blues community with Eric Clapton, and they'd played some festival somewhere, and they'd been on the same bill. And the helicopter was supposed to be for Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton...
Oh, I've heard this story now that you said that.
Eric Clapton gave him the seat on the helicopter because I think Eric Clapton went off to do something else, or he had an interview or something, and like the seat on the helicopter came up, and he said, you know, you take this one, I'll get the next one. And it was like fog or something, and then he got killed in a helicopter crash. It was terribly sad. Well,
and if you're Eric Clapton, like you're like, are you kidding me? Like there'd be some sense of like, oh God, that could have been me. But then at the same time, you're like, but I gave him the seat that killed him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you happy? Are you sad? Do you feel both ways? Like, I don't even know where you begin with those emotions.
Yeah, that is a complicated set of emotions to process. I don't know quite how you could.
Because I would probably beat myself up in the sense that I was sort of told him to get on that helicopter, but at the same time, they're like, but also I could have died.
Yeah, it's tough, he was just getting to sort of peak of his initial popularity off the back of the David Bowie Let's Dance and Double Trouble and stuff were just becoming popular. And it was around the time I was learning to play guitar, and I used to buy a lot of US guitar magazines in W.H. Smith's in Hounslow. There's one for your bingo card followers. And just as I was learning about him, I heard that he'd been killed in this helicopter crash. I mean, I never got to see him perform, though I did know somebody who saw him. He came to London a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I know someone who saw him perform, and apparently he was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
That's sad. It's always sad when you lose someone like that too, especially when it's at the height. Because like another like Buddy Holly, there's a lot of them that they're right at the height of their career when something bad happens to them. Like they're just starting to become known as, you know, the top of it. It's like that's the moment that something bad happens to them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's terribly sad. I mean, like the Buddy Holly, the day the music died. I mean, that took out so many up and coming musicians, or musicians, like you say, at the height of their fame.
Yeah, like they had just like, and it's not like I'm talking about like the people who are like they just got, they have hits, but they're not like, this is not long term. Like this is like, oh, we just became super famous and bam, we're out.
Yeah,
fortunately.
Terribly sad.
And Selena, who you've learned about.
I know about Selena now. Yes, I know all about Selena.
All right, back to Nile Rogers.
Okay, so there's a track that I didn't know Nile was involved with, and it's the B-52s, Rome. Did you know that is a Nile Rogers production song?
Not really. I mean, I love that song, and that's another one that's been used in every movie since the beginning of time, but no.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have even associated the B-52s with Nile Rogers. No,
I didn't know that. I mean, I don't know whether he worked on the rest of the album that comes from, Cosmic Thing, but that single, Rome, I said that is one of his. And I listened to it and when I was researching this episode, and it doesn't really have any of those sort of stylistic things that a lot of his work does. Which in some ways does show his range. Yeah,
I was going to say that. And also, when I think of I'm sitting here singing in my head, obviously it only is, but it's kind of, because it sounds like almost like an 80s, late 80s, early 90s pop song to me, right? Is that not what you think of when you hear Rome? And
well, you would be right, because it's from 1989.
There is kind of like a guitar part, though, like like right when they draw, like or after the lyric, but I mean, it doesn't sound necessarily like Nile Rogers. It just sounds like a guitar. No, I would have no clue, Tim. I tried to reason it, but I can't.
Yeah, I'd like to think, part of me would hope that he had something to do with Love Shack, but I don't think that's the case.
Probably not.
And I'd say, as everybody knows, the definitive version of Love Shack is one that was recorded maybe a year ago in lockdown. I don't know. I know there was a great UK singer, Jenny, was involved. I don't know who else was on it,
I'm still a little hurt I wasn't called in, but it's fine. Jenny is an amazing singer, but I could have given some backup vocals, man. That was also, though, a really cool video. Though, Tim, you kind of hate Love Shack at this point, right? Because you're burnt of it.
I was in official Love Shack retirement prior to this video. So I had performed it in the band Moroccan Soul, which I was in England, which we've discussed before. And it was myself and Linda, who female singer, and it worked pretty well. And then that sort of spilled into the jam night world. So like anyone that wanted to sing Love Shack with me, I probably did it. And then we did it all the time. And then when I left England and came here, it was laying low. The world of the Love Shack was, kind of sleeping, if you will. And then in Whiskey River, the band I was in for many years, it was discussed that it might be a good idea to do. Now, I used to do it with the drummer, who was also the singer, and that was a guy, and he used to sing in a kind of like falsetto-y type voice, and it wasn't quite the same. But the problem was I ended up getting notoriety for Love Shack, and I just got bored of it. I mean, it was just too much. It was like you would come out to play a gig, and I've been playing guitar for 30 plus years, and I'm happy with the way I play, and people seem to enjoy it. And then it was like, when do you do Love Shack? And it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Well, you should have just traded it out, started doing Rock Lobster. That's what I think. I want to see Tim perform Rock Lobster.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have the same kudos. Anyhow, so I left that band, and then I retired it, and I said, that's it. Me and Love Shack,
no more.
We are done. And then as part of this lockdown, when I was on Radio Free Jam, when I was actually co-hosting very early into the initial Radio Free Jam run, Love Shack was mentioned from my Love Shack history. And Jenny said, Ian said to me, he said, maybe, would you do it again? And I said, no, I'm a bit burned out of it. And then he said, oh, well, maybe we could do some kind of lockdown thing. And I said, if someone really wanted to do a lockdown video with me, maybe I'll be open to that. And then Jenny, like in the chat, said, I'll do Love Shack with you. And I was like, okay. And there we go. She went to Josh's studio and
her voice is amazing too.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, if you listen to the stems, even just like the backing vocals, really, really good. She is a great singer, and after I performed that, and then it's been put on YouTube, and it's got 300 or 400 views. People seem to enjoy it, but I think in the realm of the Love Shack, that's probably my final statement.
I think you just need to adopt out and start performing Rome and Rock Lobster instead. I really want to hear Tim do Rock Lobster. For Gen people, next chat, we're all going to write Rock Lobster on repeat until he does it. I don't think Nile Rogers had anything to do with Rock Lobster either, though.
Sadly not.
Anyway, back to Nile Rogers.
Right, back to the world of Nile Rogers. So one act that he worked with in the 80s, and again, I didn't really join the dots together until...
It's crazy how many different people you're saying that I'm like, no, I don't even get it.
So this is Duran Duran. He worked quite a lot with Duran Duran, and one track that he's famous for being on is Notorious. Are you familiar with that song?
I am. I can hear it.
But you hear that in the with that funky guitar thing.
That makes sense. That's one that now that you say that, I can hear that. Notorious. I wouldn't have known it had you said it, but it makes sense now.
Yeah, and it has the funky Nile
What was
Rodgers,
it he called it?
Chucking. He calls it chucking.
His chucking sound. Yeah. I thought for sure you were going to say hungry like a wolf, and I was going to be like, what?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he's involved in that. Maybe.
I know when you said Duran, that's where I thought you were going with it.
Maybe you need to look that up and see. Is this another no-name Musicast exclusive that we can exclusively reveal?
The wolf. Let's just. There's this internet thing that we can look things up on that I'm looking. Let's see. Hungry like a wolf. Produce to a real album. I don't think so.
Nah.
I'm not seeing any specific thing that features. Her name is Rio, and she's hungry like the wolf. Oh, apparently Nile Rogers opened their show one time for Duran Duran. Found that out. Hold on. Wild Boys by Duran Duran. Song facts.
I know that he's on the Reflex.
The Reflex. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. That was a reflex. Get it? That was a reflex, everybody.
Oh,
be here all week.
Thank you very much.
I can't find anything that says he's performed on Hungry Like the Wolf or produced it, but apparently he has did like open their shows and performed with Duran Duran on a bunch of concerts.
Okay.
Chic. So there you go. That would be a cool concert, like to see Chic and then see Duran Duran.
It would be. And also, talking of Nile Rodgers' performance, did you know that he played with Madonna at Live Aid?
No. And I feel like I should have. Because he's so iconic looking, like with the hair, and sometimes he wears the hat. And he
often wears like a white suit as well.
And the hat's usually, if he's wearing the hat matches the suit. Sometimes I've seen him in blue too. Yeah. And now I got to look that up. I'm going to look up the picture because I'm curious. Live Aid, Madonna.
And of course, it's not the Live Aid concert that took place at Wembley in London, the famous Queen one. It was the sister concert that took place in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Trying to see if I could see him on any of the background pictures.
You'll probably pick him up. I mean, I've seen the Live Aid, the video of Live Aid, 20 times after the fact, but I'd never put it.
Yeah, that is him.
See?
Wow. He's literally like right up front while she's got like a tambourine. Huh. Well, there you go.
Do you know the funny thing about that Madonna Live Aid performance? It's before she became. It's hard to say, but it's before she became Madonna.
Yeah.
I mean, internally she was Madonna, but she
wasn't speaking with a British accent yet.
Exactly. She's more just like every other teeny bop singer type at the time.
She looks like a young what's the word I'm looking for? She looks like a young pop artist, like who's just starting to get their wings, and she's having a lot of fun and she's jumping all over these. Now, Madonna, when she performs now, is she's very like you. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. She's very specific in the way she moves and the way she acts. She built a caricature that is Madonna, I guess is the way to look at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she is 100% in charge of her brand. The brand of Madonna.
Madonna is
she
her.
steers that branded Madonna ship. But certainly you look back at earlier in her career at Live Aid, she was not that yet.
I mean, she was like wearing just like a button-up shirt and holding a tambourine in the photo I saw.
Yeah, I would go. In fact, maybe if it's available, we will post that in the Facebook group so you can see it. But it's not the Madonna that you recognize from these days.
Yeah, and it has the picture. The picture I was looking at, I'll post it. It has Nile Rogers in it too, because it's like a picture of them together. But it was just cool. I guess I never noticed. Thanks, Tim.
There you go. See, another no-name music cast fact for you, Joy.
We need to start a thing that if anybody on our fans, if they win Jeopardy because of no name music class, we expect a 10% royalty fee. Because half the episode just going, hey, did you know this fact? No, I did not. Yes, I did. All right. What more about Mr. Nile Rogers?
Well, I mean, I've got a couple of little facts about Nile, and then we'll probably wrap the episode up. So, I mean,
Good.
His production credits are all over the place. He's worked with Sheena Easton, Jeff Beck, the Thompson Twins, Mick Jagger.
I've never even heard of that guy. Who's that guy?
He's a guy. Actually, talking to Mick Jagger, did you see that photograph of Mick Jagger taken in North Carolina about 2 weeks ago?
No, should I have?
So, Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones were playing the North Carolina Enormo Dome or some massive stadium concert on their tour that they've started up.
Uh-huh.
You know, they had a big tour and they had to shut it down because of the COVIDs, and they're now back out.
I found it.
Yeah, that picture, yes. So, before the show, Mick Jagger just went to a dive bar in North Carolina for a beer, just chilling out.
Nobody even looks like they know who he is.
No, so he goes to this bar and he just buys a beer and he's standing outside and he's just drinking his beer and just watching the world go by. And then he probably walk back to the venue or whatever he did. And after the fact, this picture comes out and they're like, hang on a minute, it's Mick Jagger.
Well, to be fair, I would be like, I'd see the guy because he's wearing a hat and he's got like a jacket on, and I mean, he's old. I'd be like, that old guy really looks like Mick Jagger, but I wouldn't be like, oh, Mick Jagger's sitting beside me in the bar in Charlotte, North Carolina. Like, I wouldn't think that either.
No, and I think he's one of these people that you see the Mick Jagger in professional photographs where it's professionally lit. He's probably wearing makeup. He has his hair done a certain way, and he's wearing stage clothes.
And you see,
and you see him in that context. But like, if you take Mick Jagger out in normal daylight, or or even at night, but you see him outside of that context, and he's just a guy standing there drinking a beer in a bar. You don't know it's him.
I would totally kick myself later, though. I remember one time, who was it? Oh, I can't remember. One of the members of Blink-182 said they walked past a guy that was wearing a Blink-182 shirt, went, hey, nice shirt. And the guy went, thanks, and just kept walking.
Well, that's like that great photograph backstage at a concert where it's your friend, Dave Grohl, and John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. And it's in a backstage hospitality area. And it's a guy in a Led Zeppelin T-shirt, passed out drunk. He's in a chair and he's just like, drunk, asleep. Yeah. And John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin goes up to him and he goes behind his back with a thumbs up. And Dave Grohl takes a picture. It's so funny. And this
like
guy
I woke up the next morning like, what happened?
And this guy with his Led Zeppelin T-shirt on. And it's just amazing.
I remember back in the day, one day I had gotten a Whole Lot of Love T-shirt when I was like 16 years old. I wore it to school. It was orange. It just said Whole Lot of Love right on the front, right? Mm-hmm. One person got the reference all day. I was kind of disappointed.
Well, at least you were lucky you could wear a cool T-shirt. When I went to school, I had to wear a uniform. Yeah.
We Americans, unless we're going to private school, that didn't happen.
No, you have to wear school uniform even if you go to a comprehensive school in Hounslow.
Well, I mean, I guess that's something that I had going for me. Even if only one person noticed it, at least I got to wear the shirt. And
Exactly.
I knew what it meant.
Exactly. You got to express yourself in your T-shirt.
It was Mark Hoppus. That's the one.
Oh, yeah.
Hoppus. Yeah, he was the one. I remember I have got him on Twitter and he said, I just passed by this guy and he took a picture of him. He's wearing a Blink-182. I would be so embarrassed if I was like, but you're right, though. Like, if you just are walking past and it just kind of looks like an average person and there's no paparazzi and security around him and it just looks like a random guy like he did with the hat on, I might not even register at that. I just walked past Mick Jagger.
Well, there was another picture like that recently. It was a couple of years ago before we lost Eddie Van Halen. Eddie went with his son Wolfgang, and I think they went to see Mark Tremonti or Tool or some like kind that. Of like contemporary rock band. And then it was like a son and father date type thing. And didn't have fancy tickets. They were just sitting out on the side like anyone else would. And a guy went up to Eddie Van Halen and he said, "Hey, buddy, can you do me a favor and take my photograph in front of the stage?" So like Eddie Van Halen took the picture for him, and then like Wolfgang was so entertained by this, he posted a picture of his dad, Eddie Van Halen, taking a photograph of this guy.
Well, you never know. I mean, it's not like, like if you pass by like Madonna, she's going to have like a parade of people around her, I guarantee you. Mm-hmm. And security, and she's going to be, like you said, she's going to be the Madonna, but like just some of these guys just look like regular guys. I don't know.
But there we go. Anyway, I'm just gonna wrap up the episode with one more Nile Rogers, which is actually more of a Chic fact. So you're familiar with the song "Rapper's Delight"?
Sugar Hill Gang. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So they took the hook of "Good Times" and made it "Rapper's Delight," and I think certainly my research suggests this is the first time that a track like that was sampled. However, Sugar Hill Gang didn't sample it. They actually replayed the whole thing. It was played fresh, but they did use that hook and that line.
Yeah, and they've said that that's where they got it from. And Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight is noticeably good. One of the first real rap songs in general. Like it's credited as being one of the first rap songs that was ever produced. Period. Yeah,
and it's a sort of rap that I don't mind too much because it tells like a story, and the music in the background is really cool.
Well, I mean, how many people don't know I'm the hip hop, the hip hop, the don't stop to the bang bang boogie. I mean, it's iconic.
Exactly, and I will tell you.
Don't you guys put that out there on the internet. Buy a tip to rapping. Don't come for me, internet. I know it's terrible. That is not my forte. I'm just saying, who doesn't know that?
Well, when I was in Whiskey River, there was a song that we used to do a medley that had Rapper's Delight in the middle, and I used to do the rapping piece. That I tried to replace my Love Shack with that, but it wasn't. It didn't have the same success.
Oh, I wouldn't see. What I do is I like some of these rap songs like that, right? Like I like some old school rap, and I know every word to it, and I'll be like, I'm so good, and then I'll like hear myself doing it, and I'll realize how I'm so bad. Like, oh, I know every word. This is so cool, and then I'll hear it back, and I'm like, oh God, don't ever let me do that in public. Bad idea. But yes, I love the Sugar Hill Gang. It's one of my favorites.
Marvelous. Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, with thoughts of hip hop, hippie hop, bang bang, and all that kind of malarkey, we're going to leave it here for this week, and we will catch you next week.
Bye.
See you later.